What we should be doing is not asking ourselves, oh snap, where they getting the knives from? Where they getting all these things? How are they arming themselves? Our question should be, who's helping them deal with the emotions? How are they managing their emotions better? Because it's not what they have in their hands, it's what they have in their heart. So we need to get to a point where we don't just address the fleshly appearance of the anger, but deal with the anger itself. I say this over and over again because we listening right now, we have future fathers that can be great, but they need to work on that. They need to work on different aspects. It's not just about being financially independent, but it's about being emotionally intelligent.
You're listening to Journey to Fatherhood, a podcast that inspires and equips men to becoming more intentional and feeling more supported on the journey to fatherhood. Why wait to become a father before learning how to be a good one? My name is Chinedum, a young man also on his journey with a desire to help men become great fathers despite their past personal experiences. I'll be sitting with different guests to bring you great value, sharing their knowledge and their experiences as we all embark on this amazing journey. This podcast, though targeted towards men, ladies, you will also gain great value from the conversations. Now, without further ado, let the journey begin.
Hello and welcome to Journey to Fatherhood. Today's podcast episode is focused on something that's really recurring in our society. And straight into it, I want to begin, before we even go any further, I want to begin by saying thank you. Thank you for the love that you've been showing the podcast. I've been hearing some great reviews from people personally, people talking to me about how they've been personally touched by the episodes we've had. I know one thing I've always had in mind is to make sure that people don't just listen, but are able to apply. So if you've had any time or any episodes in particular that stood out for you or stood out to you, and you've gotten a message out of it, please feel free to write to us, DM us, send us a DM, or get in touch with us or leave a review of how a particular episode or what stood out for you for any of the episodes that we've done. And it will be a wonderful pleasure. Once again, it's your host here, Chinedum. If this is your first time listening, I want to say welcome as you join us on the journey to fatherhood. It's not just for the guys that are married or with fathers, but it's for every single man out there, as well as the young men. And the women as well can help and learn from all of this, because every single person needs to be involved in one journey or the other. Why not help or be involved in the right journey to fatherhood? So today I really wanted to take us onto what's happening right now. So if you weren't aware, I'm located in London, the UK, Great Britain, and lately we've been having some news, unfortunately, with an increase in knife crimes, and it's been getting crazy after this is post lockdown, and we're seeing a lot of young men, young boys that are just still doing post-COVID wars and just filled with so much anger and hatred that they don't even mind exhibiting those acts of violence in public. There've been occurrence where young boys are captured in broad daylight fighting with knives, and some bring in long knives and all of those things because this person said this or there was this disagreement. And I wanted us to take it back, because sometimes we need to acknowledge the behavior but actually get down to the cause, because every behavior is a manifestation of a feeling or something deep rooted that hasn't been dealt with. And of course, one of the main things that with violence of more than likely always comes from a place of anger and pain. And if you've been following along with the podcast episodes, this is an area I really speak on. I believe that men should really be open to talk about how they truly feel and deal with it, not bottle it up. Because I always give the analogy when I speak to a few of my friends that the way anger operates is like, I don't know if you've seen these challenges that's going on right now where people will open up a Coca-Cola bottle and they have these Mentos or what do you call them now? Mints, specifically Mentos, and they put little capsules of Mentos into the Coca-Cola. What happens? It fizzes and bubbles up. What we tend to do with anger, unfortunately, sometimes when people don't deal with it, they have something that upsets them, they feel hurt, just imagine a bottle of Mentos. With every single time they get angry, they put a Mentos in that Coca-Cola bottle and they quickly cover it. and they have a look, oh wow, okay, nothing's happening. And then the next time, because they haven't dealt with that, it gets shaken up. The next time something happens, it's like putting another capsule of Mentos. And what tends to happen is eventually it's going to burst. The next time they try to open it, it's just going to pour out. And this is what tends to happen with a lot of young men, a lot of people in general, but specifically young men and men, because we don't have enough men that talk about how they truly feel. And not just talk about it, but seek help. Seek help in terms of speaking to the same group that you're with, those very friends that you call your boys and your friends, speaking to them about how you're feeling, when you've been hurt, what pain you're going through, even things that are going through at home that you can't control. Some of these young men out here, in terms of after the pandemic, I don't know all that they're going through, but some of them have probably lost loved ones. Some of them are probably experiencing some financial challenges, and some of them are simply just aggravated by other individuals. And because people are not communicating and helping each other, they feel that the best way to react is through violence. Every child at some point, every baby probably at some point was angry without really knowing what was going on, but was angry and started crying and seeking attention. However, unfortunately, some people don't quite evolve past that reactive mentality when it comes to dealing with their emotions. A baby, if you look back, a baby cries and sometimes they're angry maybe when their pacifier has been taken out, because they really want that, they crave that, they need that stimulation. And sometimes when they don't get something they want, they stomp their feet and they get angry as a toddler as they're growing up. However, a lot of men still operate in that baby infant mentality and that behavior where they don't know how to express their frustration. So they do the wildest thing they can. But the only danger is now that a lot of men, a lot of these boys and a lot of these men that we have, as men grow older, they now have access to more resources, more things that they could use to showcase their anger. And unfortunately, it's easier to express anger than deal with anger. So people tend to choose the easy way out. But as you know, as I always do, I always take it back to the very, very beginning. What's been happening all through those kids' life as we were growing up. This is no excuse for their behavior, but what happened at home? What's happening at home? How are they being dealt with at home? The friends they have around them, who's helping them? Granted, there is no justification for a young man pulling out a knife or pulling out a gun and aiming it and taking action with it. But right now, it's not just about the knife crime. That is just the surface layer of the root problem, which is people not being able to deal with their emotions. Emotional intelligence amongst men is the lowest. Unfortunately, self-awareness is something people run away from, because when we become aware to the things that we're struggling with in terms of how we easily get irritated when we see a particular person, how we easily get irritated when we think back on our childhood, and we get angry, but we don't try to solve it, that's the biggest problem ever. Because if you had an issue with your boiler, you need to get hot water run, you need to be able to, but you know that, okay, hot water's not coming out. You call the plumber. You call the plumber to come and get it fixed. But you have to clearly identify that there is a problem. Even if you know the solution, you still know where to get the solution from. You know who's an expert in the field. This is why I encourage young people men in general, seek therapy if you need therapy. Speak to your brothers, your people that you call your friends. Tell them how you truly feel. And if you listen to the podcast episode last week, you'll understand the importance of actually being able to have people that you can trust with how you're feeling. And for those same people that you're in a circle with, you all should be able to pull each other up and say, listen, what you're doing ain't right. Not all praise them, because I remember growing up in my secondary school days when I was a teenager, what was almost done was every single time there was a show of violence, and it still happens now when guys come around, this person hits this person because they're angry and they do this, they get cheered on. There's a reinforcement of that bad behavior. So in their mind, it's like, okay, I'm in pain. And when I do this, I'm bringing for people love what I do because it's a show of masculinity, a show of strength, brute strength. And so they keep on doing it to the point where they become numb to the consequences of their decisions. Now, I really want us to take some time and start dealing with these problems, because if something keeps repeating and repeating and it hasn't been dealt with, it will only get worse. Because it shouldn't be a normality for us to hear that boys are fighting, these guys are fighting, men are fighting, men are quarreling. Take it away from the violence. Let's talk about take it away from the violence that you physically see. What about the emotional abuse that a lot of guys place on each other? Emotional abuse where people are hurt from their childhood, where there was a lot of neglect, and because of that, they disrespect women. We have guys that just treat women like less than. They don't really value them enough because in their heart they've hurt. Maybe their mother left their life or their father wasn't in their life, but they don't want to address the causality of that problem. And that's the biggest issue we have. When people aren't able to deal with their emotions, it's easy to go to the gym to get some weights, over time get stronger, but it's harder to work, sit down, address your emotions, address your feelings, address your thought processes, and address your thinking and your character. That's the tough part. That's the tough part. Because most times it's not something you could flex. It's not something other people can see that you're taking strides in. So we settle, it's easier to settle for the ones where other people can see the growth, the physical growth, the pumping, the deltoids, the pecs, all of those things. But how about sitting down and writing down how you feel, having a journal? There is nothing wrong with a guy having a journal. How about doing that? How about speaking to your brothers, your immediate family? How about in your family being open about things? The problem we tend to have in society is that some people are more emotionally intelligent than others. But those that are more emotionally intelligent than others simply just stay away from those that aren't. What we need to do, just like we spread information on learning to acquire knowledge on different sectors, let's teach emotional intelligence. Let's encourage each other to be more self-aware, and not just be self-aware, but act on your awareness. It's one thing to know, it's another thing to act. Don't act out of violence. Don't act out of anger where you're just boiling up. And even if you don't express it, some people out of anger simply don't allow themselves to love. I've heard so many guys where they're saying to themselves, well, nah, I can't open up to you about that. Because their idea is that because I've got so much pent up anger, no, I've got to live with it. You're not more manly for letting the anger brew. The most manliest thing and the most courageous thing you can do is to dig deep and dig out all that anger and deal with it. Sometimes the best way is going through, not going around the problem, but going through and going deep down to find out, why am I like this? Why is there so much frustration? Why is there so much anger? For all the listeners right there, at the very beginning, the very first episode, if you want to have a look, the very first episode of Journey to Fatherhood podcast, I made it clear where this was inspired, where the podcast was inspired, all the things that accumulated to me deciding to launch this podcast. For a long time as a teenager, I didn't realize, but I had so much anger towards my father. And I'm a strong Christian. I'm a man of faith, and I'm a strong Christian. You know, I've been serving in the church for so long, but I didn't know there was that big anger in my heart. So I remember, like I'll keep on saying the story. I was on the roof of my friend's accommodation in my first year at the age of 18. We were having a conversation, and we kind of talked about, because his father was a retired professional athlete. And he was talking about some of the resentment he had towards his father. And in that conversation, I also talked about some things I feel towards my father. And he checked me up on this. Now, this is the importance of having men that can call you out and tell you to deal with certain things that you've always put aside. I remember Jamal to this very day. He told me, this is my friend, whilst I was on the roof, he told me, yo, Chinadu, you need to deal with this. You have so much hate towards your father. In my head, I'm the nicest guy, you know, I'm the most optimistic guy when you talk to me. But I did not know there was anger and resentment towards my father. And if anything, that anger, though I didn't express it through violent means, it caused me to start trying to almost work myself to the ground, always seeking validation or not even congratulating or appreciate myself enough. Because in my head, I was so angry. In my head, I was saying, you know what, I'm going to be so successful that I'm going to show him that because he wasn't practically involved in my life, this is what you get. But that's not the right way, because you're suffering. Anger it's not always going to manifest in physical representation of violence. It could really be internal destruction. Because you're angry, you're just killing yourself inside. So this is why it's important in your group of men, your brothers, whatever it is, be able to talk to each other. Be able to learn how to be confrontational, but constructive confrontation. And unfortunately, this is where a lot of men struggle. Because for a while, for some of them, they just don't talk, they don't address issues, and people walk all over them, they get angry, there's just so much pent-up anger, and then one day they snap and they do something they'll regret for the rest of their life. I've worked in 2 different schools in the UK, and one thing I know, that a lot of the young people that get recommended for anger management, behavior management, anger management courses tend to be more guys than women, more guys than females, more males than females get recommended for anger management courses. Because unfortunately, there are more guys that just don't know how to handle their emotions than there are women. And you can have a look at it. Violence, knife crimes, and all of those things, you tend to have more males in prison than anything. And if you don't want to go that far, okay, look back in your home. Because we're not taking time to address this thing that it hasn't gone away. It hasn't gone away. It still keeps pouring down like rain. Because if you're living in a house and you've got a hole and it keeps dripping water, putting a bucket there just to catch the water doesn't solve the problem. Because the bucket will get full and you pour it away, it will still be leaking. The best thing is to do, whilst you have the bucket there managing it, find a way to close that hole. That is what we have to do. And we need to be okay with saying to each other, listen, I don't like the way you talk to me about this. Let's have a conversation on this. I was hurt. But a lot of the things that happens is that most guys don't want to admit to someone that's hurt them that they've been hurt. I know guys that were like, no, I'm not gonna, no, I don't want him to feel that he had one on me. So you respond by being violent. But of course, you being violent clearly shows you were hurt. So you still express that you were hurt by that. So we need to deal with this, because I see a lot of young men, like I was saying, going back to having worked in 2 different schools. When I speak to a lot of these young boys, a lot of them in their teens, 13s and 14s, in that mid stage where they're trying to understand themselves for themselves, having to develop that identity, they're frustrated and they're angry. A lot of the things they do has nothing to do with the reason why they're angry. Some of them come into school and they're just angry because there was a conversation that talked about other guys who have their fathers coming to the parents' evening. And the very ones that are angry, they just don't know where the anger comes from. They don't know where the frustration comes from. And just that day's been ruined because some of them don't have their fathers in their lives. And there's so much anger, but because we don't address the cause of it, we keep dealing with the manifestation in the behavior, and we still ask ourselves, why can't you just stop being angry? It's not that simple. It's not that simple. Because we need to dig deep into ourselves. As you're listening to this, you may be a woman that has a brother, a husband, or a man that that needs to hear this. Share this with them. Talk to them about this, and make sure as much as you can to see that they're doing better in terms of dealing with it. Because there is so much information on how to manage anger, how to de-stress, but yet we still have a lot of people that take in that information but don't act on it because they don't have enough people holding them accountable. I talked about this in the last episode. It just hurts my heart that there are so many lives being lost because people couldn't communicate properly. And it comes down to that. The very word, communicate. You're angry. You've been hurt for so many things. There's so many reasons why you, in most people's eyes, you're justified to make this action. But the truth about it is, your reasoning behind why you should do something is more reason to support why you don't. Because if you have that ability to make a choice, that means you have the upper hand, not your emotions. Don't be led by your emotions and cause the reason why you did this to be, oh, I was angry. I remember my mother always used to say this to me. Growing up, she would always tell us, listen, don't ever let yourself get into a position where you said, oh, I did this because I was angry. And she would always tell me and my immediate older brother, because unfortunately, with an age gap, we're literally a year and I believe 14 days, a year and 13 days apart in terms of our birthday. And growing up, especially around my teens, now being honest, I used to instigate a lot of it, where I just irritate him, and then we get into scuffles and all these things. These not play fights, would fight growing up, and my mother would always be angry with us. Not angry but the reason why she was angry, because she understood that sometimes anger in a minute can make you do something you regret for the rest of your life. So as time was going on, she always held us accountable to it. And that's the same thing you can do. And it's never too late. You could even pull up your father. If you're a young man, listen to this, and you have a father, your father's always angry. You could sit him down and say, Dad, let's have a conversation on anger. You'd be surprised how many men would come out and pour out their hearts when they really see that someone cares. What we should be doing is not asking ourselves, oh snap, where are they getting the knives from? Where are they getting all these things? How are they arming themselves? Our question should be, who's helping them deal with the emotions? How are they managing their emotions better? Because it's not what they have in their hands, it's what they have in their heart. So we need to get to a point where we don't just address the fleshly appearance of the anger, but deal with the anger itself. I say this over and over again because we listening right now, we have future fathers that can be great, but they need to work on that. They need to work on different aspects. It's not just about being financially independent, but it's about being emotionally intelligent. To be able to be self-aware, to be aware of your emotions, to deal with those bouts of anger, those bouts of frustration. This is a topic that's very dear to me because unfortunately people do things out of anger and they just say, you know what, I'll face the consequences. But it's never that straightforward, because you're not the only one affected when you're angry and you lash out. I say this and I say this over and over again. If you have a friend, a male friend, if you have a brother, if you call yourself a true friend, you should be able to sit each other down and talk about how you truly feel and help each other get better. Don't encourage them when they're punching up this person, when they're fighting, or when they're expressing this type of violence, because at the end of the day, you will be the very person saying to yourself, wow, how did it end up like this? Let's deal with this before it gets worse. Let's deal with this before we start saying, oh, I wish. The worst thing to do is live in regrets, because most times with regrets, regrets often come from two different things: an action that was taken or an inaction when you didn't act on something. So with this information you've heard, I hope you will call your brother, call your friend, call those guys you know, call your son, call your father, and have the conversation. Why are you angry? And most people never want to admit that they're angry because they feel it's a sign of weakness because you allowed someone to hurt you. But it's not. You're a human being. You have these emotions. The question is, how do you act on it? I really hope we get to a generation where people are okay with talking about how they feel and not just talking about it, working on dealing with it, and have people that love them enough to hold them accountable. If you have anything you want to get off your chest, listen, speak to the person, confrontational management. Be able to confront them, but be able to also relax, calm yourself, and seek solution. Seek solution. That's the only way forward. When we are able to first admit that there is a problem and next seek change. So I really encourage you, as you listen to this, don't just put it on the back burner. Don't just skip and go on to your next activity. Take some time. If it means 5 minutes of your life, it wouldn't take all. You can still live life after 5 minutes. Spend 5 minutes. Whether you're male or you're female, I know we have some female listeners. If you're listening to this, just take 5 minutes. Write down those areas that you're hurting from. Those areas of pain where you're angry, why you're angry. And start to tackle out, who do I need to speak to about this? How can I solve this? And I challenge you, if you can do this, you'll be a step closer. Whenever you get angry or you feel yourself getting agitated, pause and ask yourself, why am I really angry? What is the cause of this? Okay, how can I deal with this? Is that the best solution to this? Because eventually you will realize that you will now start to become your own sub-therapist. Because it goes beyond just emotion. You apply logic to your emotions. That's emotional intelligence. Own your life. Don't let your emotions rule your life. I love you all, and I look forward to listening to your feedback and your reviews. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. We have our YouTube channel, Journey to Fatherhood, and please make sure you follow us and leave a review on all our podcast listening platforms. That's on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and the rest of them. Wherever you're listening to, please write us a message. Send us a message on our Instagram, which is Journey to Fatherhood. That's Instagram, Journey to Fatherhood, and Twitter at J2Fatherhood. That's at J2Fatherhood. I really look forward to hearing how you're applying the messages we've been having over the last episodes. I look forward to seeing you enjoy your journey to fatherhood. God bless you. See you next week.